Let's move on to Kevin McShan. Kevin is another amazing individual. He's a motivational speaker. I also, again, met him because I was featured on his podcast, Let's Have This Conversation. And what that is, he's saying if we want change to happen, we need to be willing to have those deep conversations. So an amazing achievement that he's had that podcast for just over a year, and he's over 300 episodes. I believe he's at 305. That's incredible to do in 1 year. And he doesn't just go live and post them. He adds his journalism side to it and adds statistics and really makes it and develops it into something amazing. So that's worth checking out. But before you do, let's check out his discussion on inclusion. Something you may not know about Kevin is he's lived with cerebral palsy, so he'll talk about that. And mainly he's talking about inclusion and how he can include people with disabilities in the workplace and the importance of that, not only for that individual, but for the workplace. So let's give it up. Let's hear what he has to say. Welcome on, Kevin McShan.
First and foremost, I want to thank everyone for being here, and I want to thank Jake for having me as a panelist for this incredible discussion about inclusion and finding your purpose. As Jake told you, my name is Kevin McShan, and it's a real honor to be with all of you today. As Jake told you, I was born with what's called a spastic quadriplegic cerebral palsy. It simply means that I don't have enough oxygen in my legs to walk normally. But one thing you'll learn about me is I live my life through two principles. I always say that inclusion is the gateway to independence, and that I hate excuses, because excuses are an artificial way to give yourself an excuse not to accomplish your goals. So tonight I'm going to talk to you about inclusive employment for folks with disabilities. As you know, my background, if you've read anything about me, is about inclusive employment for folks with disabilities. But before we dive into that discussion, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I graduated college in 2010, and it took me 6 years to get my first paying job. And through that process, I learned about myself, the value of perseverance and the value of looking forward to accomplishing the goals and that you set out for yourself, and also putting a plan of action in place. And tonight I'm going to talk to you about tangible action steps you can take if you're an employer or someone with a disability looking for employment, and also finding a way to persevere to make sure that you have a full and fulfilling life, whether you're an employer or an individual with disabilities. So with that, I'll ask Jake to move to the next slide. And as I said, we're going to talk about diversifying your workforce. And once you do that, you'll get a instant accelerant for your workforce and making sure that everyone is included at work. So Jake, you can move on. So when we talk about increasing diversity at work, you got a couple of things that'll happen for you. You'll get an instant win or competitive edge over your competition. You'll also get reduced training costs, because people with disabilities want to prove they can do the work, right? So you don't have to keep training people to do the same work over and over again. So by hiring someone with a disability, you actually save money. Imagine that. Of course, as I mentioned, for your training costs are reduced, and also your turnover when you train staff is less, because people with disabilities want to stay and prove that they can do the work. So you also get increased morale and better productivity as well. And you, as a leader or an executive in an organization, your morale will also skyrocket. So those action steps that you can take, but it first starts with creating a culture of acceptance and cohesion. And what I mean by that, it goes back to inclusion is the gateway to independence. You've got to include people in the conversation in order to see the impactful difference. So you can go to the next slide, Jake. So you want some proof on how this works, right? So the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, and one thing I forgot to mention to you is that I'm coming to you today from Canada, which is pretty cool. But the Ontario Chamber of Commerce put together some statistics for us to look at. 72% of people with disabilities stay longer in jobs if you give them a chance to be employed. So there's tangible evidence right there. 92% of the people that you do business with want to support businesses who hire people with disabilities. So again, another tangible action piece you can take to the bank as an employer or entrepreneur who's looking to grow and expand their business. And the last piece here is very, very important because, one of my former jobs was being the ambassador for something called the Discoverability Network, which was the online job matching portal for the province of Ontario to match employers and individuals with disabilities to get connected. And, when I talk to employers, one question that constantly comes up is how much money is this going to cost me? And how much time do I have to invest in this process? And the Ontario Chamber of Commerce tells us that 80% of people with disabilities don't require any accommodations at all when it comes to retrofitting or accommodating a workforce to better suit people with disabilities. And here's the important part. When you have to dole out money, the same study tells us that 80% of people with disabilities, the accommodations for those people are less than $500. It could be as simple as the raised height of a desk, the use of assisted software, or a headset. So it's very easy to make very simple accommodations to create an environment of success and increase morale in the workforce. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is the 3 C's as an employer, right? Are you committed to creating a culture of success? Are you committed to the process, right? The first thing you have to do is make the commitment. The second thing you have to do is find out what are the conditions that I have to create in the workforce to make sure that my workplace is inclusive and accessible. And the last piece, of course, is embracing creativity. You have to be creative. One thing about hiring someone with a disability, they can help you solve problems and look at things from a different perspective. So when we look at the 3 C's, it's about creating conditions, embracing creativity, and also creating a culture of inclusion for everyone. So next I want to bring you a series of short videos, starting with my friend Lauren Winnings, who is the CEO and founder of a company called Next Level Benefits. They help people with their HR needs and creating environments of success at work. And Lauren says, again, there are tangible action steps you can take in order to create an inclusive workforce. So with that, I'll let you listen to Lauren at this time.
It's such a great question, and I think that it goes beyond just saying it. There's some actionable steps that organizations can take. First actionable step is you want to create a aspirational narrative around, inclusivity, around diversity, around equity. If the organization, wants to challenge that and take that on as a value within your organization, you got to document it. You got to put it down. You got to make sure that it's available for people to access so that they can see the company's committed to this. So once that commitment is made, then it's all the different steps that come after that. It's, creating a hiring strategy that includes those that, may be disabled, or, maybe not necessarily have college educations, but there's opportunities within the organization that they can, take advantage of that don't require a college education. There's so many different, strategies that could be deployed from a hiring perspective that allow employers to get access to candidates that they wouldn't have normally considered, of being a good fit for their organization. That's a few of the things that you can do, but, also making sure that their environment, are set up properly for those who might have, a disability, making sure that your policies speak to everyone, who might fall under a particular policy. So your HR policies also have to be written in a way that shows that you recognize that there are differences within your workforce. And then lastly, I think it's also making sure that when you're communicating with your people, that you're providing, accessibility and accommodations when needed and necessary to make sure that everyone can hear your message and everyone can be a part of the conversation.
So again, that's all about tangible action steps that every employer can take right now that doesn't require a whole lot of resources in order to make the commitment to be successful. So with that, we'll move on to the next slide there, Jake. So now I want to bring you remarks from a friend of mine. Jessie Kaufman is the Senior Vice President and Lead Consultant for a company called Everyday Business Resiliency Group. And the cool thing about Jessie, before we play the video, is that his father spent 25 years in special education. So Jessie says, when we look at creating an environment of inclusion, it all starts with having a broad range of perspectives.
That's an area that I'm very familiar with. My what we call growing up a special education teacher and I'm in high school for 25 years. Just the model of education, of tailoring it to everyone's needs to help them be more successful is something we can apply to businesses. And I think the big reason to push for that kind of individualization and focus on everyone's talents and uniqueness is that a business with more diversity, more inclusion, gives you more experiences for people to draw from to make your business better. It eliminates blind spots that a business can have if you have too many people from the same background, from the same life challenges. And so a business can focus on including more people that have been through more. It makes the business stronger because now you've got people that know what it's like to deal with challenges, that know, oh, hey, we're facing this issue as a business. You know what, I've dealt with something similar over here in my life, and what if we apply that scenario to it? You see that the strongest businesses, the strongest organizations are the ones that have people from the most broad spectrum of experience in life, and that's the kind of robustness you want to build into a business from the get-go. So if you can pull as many people like that in, it just makes everybody better.
So again, it all goes back to creating a broader perspective, because then your scope of resources and responsibilities as an employer increases. So you have more in your toolbox in order to be inclusive and accepting of all people of all abilities. And the last video of the trio that I wanted to present to you today comes from my buddy Kyle Porter. And Kyle, Jacob, you would switch to the next slide there, bud. Kyle is the owner and founder of a company called Guidepost Marketing. And Kyle believes that the marketing space for folks with disabilities is ripe with opportunities for them to be successful. So with that, we'll listen to Kyle's remarks, and then I'll have some final thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing about marketing is really that it's about well, and one of those is the ability to put yourself in someone else's position, understand their unique circumstances, and then to deliver things that that make their life better. And the other thing that that really makes a big difference and makes somebody good at marketing is the ability to adapt. Because we don't see a lot of success the first time out. A lot of marketing is trying something, getting feedback, and then adapting. And for folks with disabilities, there are probably not two skills that people with disabilities are better at than empathy and putting themselves in other people's shoes, because that's something that they hope they will receive. They want folks with disabilities want empathy. They want people to understand their position. And at the same time, the other thing they present, these challenges are presented to them every day, and all they do is adapt. I know that I believe you told me that you have cerebral palsy. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
And so you're faced with these challenges day in and day out, and you've got to figure out ways to navigate a world that in a lot of ways is not built for you. And you've got to figure out how to adapt, how to navigate those situations. And so, if I'm bringing somebody on, in my business to write copy or to run, an ad campaign or to work with clients, I can't think of somebody better than someone who is constantly adapting and who's developed that mindset of, we're going to figure out a way to make this work. So, I think that the marketing space is ripe with opportunity, for folks with disabilities.
So again, it's all about I'm going to go back to it because it's all about creating a culture, embracing the notion of creativity, because creativity, I always told employers that it's important to look at the scope of your work and look for opportunities where you can fit the employer's skill set for the job, rather than trying to retrofit an employee with a disability to retrofit your expectations, and not to be so rigid with the way the execution process is done, right? Embracing technology, looking at different ways or smarter ways we can use technology, or use the art of communication, working from home if that's something that is palatable. But the last thing I want to tell you is that when you give someone with a disability a job, you open up doors of inclusion in both their societal and economic life, but you also give them a sense of empowerment and belonging into something that's more powerful than themselves. You give them a sense of community. I also told employers that people with disabilities have to pay taxes too, right? So you have to give them the opportunity. There's no 50% off policy when it comes to having a disability. So it's all about opening doors of inclusion and acceptance. And the last slide that I want to give some final thoughts to is that when we look at opportunity, when we look at talent, it's an equally distributable commodity. But that can't be said when we look at opportunity for folks with disabilities. And you as employers or leaders of marketing firms or employment agencies or businesses have the power to give them the independence they seek. So with that, I want to thank Jake for having me, and also always remember that inclusion is the gateway to independence. And if you guys want to follow anything that I do, I'm on LinkedIn. You can find the Let's Have This Conversation platform on YouTube. You can also visit the website and visit me on any social media platform. So again, Jake, thanks for having me, and I hope you guys got something on how to make your workplaces more inclusive.
Well, thank you, Kevin. I'm just going to give you your outro right here. You did such an awesome job with your presentation. So thank you for this. There's so many great points to highlight. Something that you said was the 3 C's, committed to creating a culture. That speaks volumes. There's so many ways that we can talk about creating a culture and how you need to be committed to do that. And hopefully this opens people's minds to the power of inclusion, not only for the person that you're including, but for the workplace. And so I just want to thank you, Kevin. You did an awesome job with your presentation.
Thanks for having me, Jake. And thanks everybody for attending tonight's discussion about success and prosperity. It's been great.
All right. Thank you for watching today's video. I hope you got some value out of that. I hope you enjoyed it. Know that this was a free live conference for people, and putting up this video took some time as well, redeveloping this, revamping it. And if you enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit the like button, and know that wherever you're watching this, if you share it, whether it's on LinkedIn or whether you're watching it on YouTube and you share it somewhere else, or if you're watching it on Facebook, please like the video, share the video, and so we can reach more people, giving them value. I'm glad that you enjoyed it, and take care.